How's it going, guys? It's so early today. I've been up for a little bit. My wife and I had like a really interesting conversation at like 4 o'clock in the morning after we fed the baby. Yeah, I just couldn't go back to sleep, so I've been up since then, and I've been working on some of the video stuff. I've been meaning to wake up early every day to try to work on more things, you know. But there are times when I have the energy to, but on the days that I do somehow manage to wake up early enough to be able to work on something, I'm always like in a great mood, right? Because I feel like, man, I literally don't have to do anything for the rest of the day, and I still feel like I was very productive throughout the whole day. Of course, I'm gonna try to be more productive, even more, but at the same time, it's awesome getting a lot of work done in the morning. So on top of that, I feel like it would be a perfect opportunity for me to start one of my New Year's resolutions. Is like everyone, right? Go to the gym and get more healthy. So yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym right now and, you know, start lifting. I was just kidding. I was only in there for like 15-20 minutes or so. Getting into things and benching. So I'm gonna do some light jogging and figure out what to do, and then go home to see the wife and kid. Look at that. They're like demolishing a building over there. Today I wanted to talk about a pretty important topic called imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome is not like a technical term. It's just one of those things that's very common among new developers, people with like non-traditional backgrounds. It's pretty common for people to feel imposter syndrome. Now, what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome happens basically when you're working as a software engineer, but you feel like you don't belong there. And there's many number of reasons why you might feel this way. Maybe your job's like extremely difficult and you feel like you can't deliver on the tickets that you're getting, the program that you're trying to write. You feel like you can't do it. So that's number one. Other people around you have like impeccable resumes where you feel like everyone else is just like amazing at their job. So things like that could happen. Finally, like this is really relevant to people with non-traditional backgrounds, but you may feel a little intimidated because you know in the back of your mind that you never went to college for this. So for whatever reasons that you think that you're maybe not as qualified. So all of this is just in your head though. Or no one is saying like, hey, that guy's not that good of an engineer because he didn't go to school for it. Not a lot of people say stuff like that. Most of the time, they'll judge you based on your character, how you are as an engineer individually. And so that's what imposter syndrome is in a nutshell. Whew. So let me get back home real quick, and then we'll talk about a few ways you could get rid of this imposter syndrome. Man, so beautiful out today. Let's get to work. All right, so the first tip that I have is actually very simple, but at the same time, it's one of those things that's just hard to do in practice. Tip number one is to admit to yourself that you can't physically know everything. This fact is so relevant, like it's relevant in like everything that you do, but it's so relevant in engineering. There's new frameworks to learn, there's new languages to learn, there's new architecture, designs. All these things are coming out at a speed where no human being can possibly like consume everything. So basically, the faster you admit that to yourself, the more acceptable like you not feeling uncomfortable, not knowing would go away, right? So imposter syndrome, one of the main factors is like you feel like you should know something, but you don't. And if you kind of recognize that there's just so much to learn, then it's okay to not know certain things. Now, I do want to emphasize a small like tidbit here. There are certain things that you should know, but it does depend on what level you are. For example, if you're a junior, there's certain things that you should know. So there's different knowledge gaps and things based on your field, and also like your level. If you're senior engineer, there's certain things that are expected of you. So those are like obvious, but there are certain things where you're just not sure whether it's like a foundational thing or not. by all means, go ahead and ask. Just be honest about it up front. You know, if you like, don't do it publicly if you feel that it's like something you should kind of know, but you know, talk to someone like a mentor, find a mentor and talk to them about it, ask them about it. Find someone you could safely ask questions to. That will definitely help you in the long run, because there's, you know, everyone will have questions, but if you feel uncomfortable asking those questions, then you're gonna just go along just nodding your head like, yeah, I got it, when in fact you don't really understand a single thing. The thing about like just kind of lying your way through yeses, that's actually more detrimental to you in the long run. This goes for everything. It's not just software engineering related, but being honest about your skill set takes real skill. Like you need to be very confident in yourself to be able to say, hey, I know this about the skill sets that I have, but I have a lack of these other skill sets. And that's very important to have. And you don't want to sound like you know everything about everything, and then no one respects you because they realize that you actually don't know everything, right? So tip number 1 is to admit that you actually don't know everything. So tip number 2 is doing your due diligence. So the thing is, you're not gonna know how to do everything, but at the same time, there's a few things that you should actually look up first. Hey baby. So doing your due diligence is like this. Let's say that you are in a meeting and some new terminology or something comes up and you're not really sure. Instead of you immediately saying, I don't know, or I don't know how to do certain things, the smart thing would be looking it up on your own first. And then if you still then don't know how to do a certain thing, then you could bring it up to your manager or your mentor. But you should at least try to figure it out on your own first. So this happened to me once when I first started working as a software engineer. I thought I knew quite a bit about just engineering in general, but I never really took the time to learn like the various tools that we use to organize the work that we do. So for example, I knew what Agile was, but I've never actually done an Agile process before. So I never like went through like kind of a sprint review or like planning, you know, I never tried to estimate points to a project, so things like that. So I remember the first time I went into a sprint review meeting, I was so lost, and I felt really intimidated because I feel like I had to know these, like, why didn't I know this kind of stuff? You know, I spent so many years like learning all this stuff about software engineering, but for some reason I missed this one thing. So what I did was I looked it up online. I figured out what it was for and what it was used for. After that, I also told my manager, hey, I never actually officially done like a project using Agile. I've heard of it, you know, things like that. So I would love if you give me like a quick like 10-minute lesson on it. And he did. And I also like started like talking to the Scrum Masters and things like that. And I took them out for lunch, and I kind of just asked them basic questions, like dumb questions essentially. And in the end, I was able to quickly learn about the processes, and now it's just, you know, it's like the back of my hand. It's like very simple. And this is just like a small example, right? It has nothing to do with like engineering in itself, but it's just one of those things. Another thing for me in the beginning, I had a lot of like questions on AWS, like cloud computing stuff, right? So AWS is one of those topics that when you're learning by yourself, it will be rare that you will naturally like go dive deep into AWS unless you're interested in like DevOps or cloud computing. But if you're just interested in making websites, deployment and, you know, deploying for scale, things like that are like kind of not in your mind. You're just busy learning how to code. So when I started working and all these terminologies were being thrown around with about AWS, you know, EC2, S3, Kinesis, Dockerizing containers, using Kubernetes, like all these like terminologies were being thrown out, I remember feeling really intimidated. Like I was like, oh my God, like I don't know any of this stuff. So basically I told my boss about this like feeling that I had, and then he recommended that I get certified. Because once I get certified, then at least I'll have the fundamental knowledge to be able to communicate with people regarding AWS. And that's exactly what I did. But if I never mentioned that to my boss, he wouldn't have like supported me as much as he did to pursue this. So just be honest and do your due diligence and research. and you should be fine. Like, imposter syndrome is one of those things that, like, people who are has been in the industry for a long time can still have, because it's not really a set of skills that you need to learn to not have imposter syndrome. It's more of a it's more of like mentally you have to have a state of mind to get rid of your imposter syndrome. So yeah, that's pretty much the two main tips that I have. So finally, I just want to leave you guys with this. Imposter syndrome is like, it's a real thing. It's a real issue. A lot of people I know struggle with it. Even I struggled with it for a little bit. But I want to encourage you guys to try your best to quickly get over this imposter syndrome. Or at least be conscious about it so that you could know why you feel a certain way. You know, why you may feel like, oh, I don't belong here. You know, things like that. Like, those are common feelings, but at the same time, I don't think they're very helpful. I think, yeah, everyone should have a humble feeling to their skill level and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if you're not confident about your skill level, or if you're not confident about the work that you can do and the work that you've done, that's actually a big hindrance to your career in the long term, right? Because the more confidence you have, the more willing you will take on new projects, the more you will take on new challenges, and then that will help you get it noticed, get ahead. It'll also help you learn, right? But if you're stuck thinking that you don't belong, then it's really hard for you to challenge yourself to go to that next level. Put yourself in a position where you could really shine, right? Like, things like that will not happen if you're just one foot in the door and one foot out the door, you know, worrying about whether or not you belong. The thing is, if you're already working as an engineer in the field, you belong. If you are really grinding your gears and then learning every day, then you probably belong too. Whether or not you're working full-time or part-time or just getting started, I think you belong. We all belong to this industry. Whether some people will say that only like certain types of people should learn this, you know, don't let any of those people get you down, because in the end, they learned it just the same as you did. They spent the time to learn it, whether that be at a university or on their own. It's just a skill set. It's like learning how to ride a bike. Everyone can learn how to ride a bike. And I honestly feel that with programming as well. With enough effort and drive and passion, anyone can learn how to program. So I hope that's kind of an encouragement to you guys. You are able to take this and just, you know, forget about it. Stop worrying. Stop caring so much about other engineers think about you. Only really think about yourself and what you're learning, because in the end, everything that you learn will become yours. So don't bother wasting your time with imposter syndrome. Anyways, I hope you guys have another wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time.